athlete, author, speaker, entrepreneur, CEO of Work in Your Game, expert in discipline, mental toughness, confidence, and personal initiative. Dre Baldwin, thank you very much indeed for joining me today.
Paul, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Would you, for my audience over here who is probably not familiar with the whole bouncing of the ball sport, because we're more of the kicking of the ball sport.
Right.
I don't know if you can see, if you're listening, you can't see me pointing at a US flag right behind me, but I'm married to an American. So for the Brits who might not be familiar with basketball, can you give us a little bit of a thumbnail sketch about the 9 years of amazingness and all the background you've got?
Sure. So my background's as an athlete, played basketball overseas 9 years. I came from a Division III college, which is the third tier of college sports. Usually the pros come from the Division I level. I was at the Division III level. So for me to play pro was kind of not really in the cards. So I had to really hustle and market and sell myself in order to get an opportunity to play pro basketball, which is great because it kind of set me up for my future life, what I was going to be doing after basketball. So played pro ball for 9 years. While I was doing that, started marketing and promote myself online. Actually, I got online on YouTube and I was just making basketball training videos for ball players, not as a strategy to get into business. I was just doing it because it was available and I had footage and I saw the players were valuing and benefiting from the footage. Then maybe a few years later, probably about 5 years into it, I did this for about 10 years. About 5 years into it, I realized that the players were willing to invest in things like training programs for basketball players, or they wanted to learn more about mindset. So I started doing those things. And when I started talking about the mindset pieces, Paul, what happened is people who didn't play basketball started finding me and letting me know that the stuff I was talking about when it related to the mental game applied off the court as well as on the court. And I was always looking for that transition piece that could take me from the sports world to the everybody else world. And that was it. That was the mindset piece. So that's what I started focusing on. And I was doing that before I even finished playing. So my transition from athlete to entrepreneur was a little bit smoother than most athletes because it wasn't do this 100%, then stop and then start at zero. I was already had a good amount of momentum going for what is now my business before I even stopped playing basketball. So that's a long story short, or short story of how we got here.
You've got to explain one thing as well. Getting from the tier 3 into pro basketball, you were a walk-on. What is that? And why is this unusual?
Well, usually in college sports, at least here in the USA, if you're going to play at a higher level, usually you get recruited. You're sought out. People come looking for you. And because I had barely played in high school, no one was looking for me. So in order for me to play in college, I would have to walk on. And walking on simply means you literally just walk into the practice or the tryout or the training and you hope, even though nobody knows you, you hope you can impress the people in charge enough with your ability that they're willing to let you be on the team. So that's what I was able to do. And I did this it was at a smaller school, at a Division III school. So it was actually good timing for me and a good situation that I went to a school that was smaller where I could get on the team. I knew pretty easily and I was able to build up some confidence in myself just from that experience, even though I was at a small school. So that's how I got to play in college.
But that takes a degree of cojones. That takes some serious brass ones, walking onto in front of, it's an audition, really. You're going into audition yourself. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah. And then, so you managed to have this layer of the professional sporting career as you were developing this personal brand, and then later you have the business that came out of that. Mm. What were the biggest challenges you faced as you went through the transition from stopping sports, other than trying not to put on 300 pounds, right? But stopping sports to becoming an entrepreneur?
Biggest challenges I faced were, the biggest one was just really figuring out how exactly does the business thing work? Because I had been doing some business. I've been selling my own products and making ad revenue and, started writing books. I've been doing all that while I was still playing. But then when you have, the whole day to run your business, of course, you want to add more pieces to it and you want there to be some structure, what I want to call it, just make it more tangible, exactly what you're doing and how you're going to do it. So for me, the first thing that I was going to replace the basketball time with was I wanted to get into professional speaking. And I met someone who was already in the business and they told me basically the fundamentals, the foundations of it. And then basically you got to get on the phone. You got to start dialing and seeing if you can get someone to just give you an opportunity to get on the stage and speak. And that's really what I spent a lot of my first year out of basketball doing. I was still selling I had some books out at that point. I had my basketball training products and I still had a significant basketball audience. So I was still selling those things. And I had some courses, things like that I was selling, really just figuring out how to establish myself as this guy is a bona fide entrepreneur, because I didn't want to stay in the basketball space, which is what Paul easily could have done. Could have just stayed in the basketball space and just focused on, instead of playing basketball now, just talk about training or coaching or just talking about the game as an analyst or something. But I knew I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go into a world of business that had nothing to do with basketball, where I was just using basketball kind of as a feature of who I was, but I was not in the basketball industry.
It was an enabler for you, an enabler. Maybe.
Right, exactly, right.
So to make that step, and even the confidence to walk into the game, the confidence to say that I'm not going to just be an ex-player, because we have the pundits over here as well. You know, you have the ex-players are floating around the edges of whatever it is they're doing, what they used to be doing, whether the football matches or the tennis or whatever the sports are. You stepped out. And that takes quite an element of mental toughness. Now, I know that's something you speak about, you talk about. So how would you recommend them? Because my goal from this podcast is to take the wisdom from people like you and try and shape it into something that people can go, oh, I can do that, that, and that. How would you recommend that other people could develop that sort of mental toughness, that resilience that started you off and then kept you going?
Well, the most important thing is you got to be clear where you want to go and why you want to be there. That matters a ton. What is the outcome that we want to achieve, and why does it matter to you? Because when it comes to mental toughness, it usually you only need mental toughness when you're in a tough situation, right? Because if the situation is not tough, you don't need to be mentally tough. You can be mentally weak and everything's working out. No need for any toughness. So you need to have a strong reason, and that reason is connected to emotion. Emotion overpowers logic. And when your logical reasons for doing things run out, then the emotion can take over and it can kind of power you through that challenging situation. So that's where that mental toughness comes from. Tell me the rest of the question that you asked me.
Well, okay, you've got the mental toughness, which is the one that puts you on the track in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But then to keep going. So it's that aspect of resilience, the discipline to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the mental toughness is just what's going to push you through when the situation is challenging. When it comes to the resilience and the discipline to keep going, it's having there's a few things you want to have. Is clearly the decision that you actually want to achieve the outcome. That matters a lot. Then you put the structure in place, because discipline is a result of structure. When you put the right structure in place, then discipline is actually a lot easier than it looks, or a lot easier than it sounds. And the main challenge a lot of people have with lacking discipline is that they have no structure. And when you have no structure, it's hard to remain disciplined, because everything is kind of all over the place. There's no routine. There's no process. There's nothing for you to follow. And then you want to logistically set things up so that the discipline and following the structure are actually easier for you. So, for example, someone's trying to lose weight. You want to get the chocolate and the ice cream and the potato chips out of the house. Right? That logistically sets you up to be more successful. And the structure is, okay, I'm going to work out this day at this time with this trainer. All right. And you make the decision that I'm going to do this. And that is what allows you to push through when your trainer has you doing an extra set of push-ups that you don't want to do, or you want the ice cream, but you know you don't want to eat it. So having that reason will push you through doing the stuff that the process and the logistics tell you to do.
I'm a great believer that willpower is a fantasy. I think right. you have some willpower, you have some desires and things to do. But if you make a decision, as you said there, I've decided I have an intent to be a person. And people who are like that do the following things. The following things require, as you said, a structure, a framework, a set of habits that you can shoehorn into your life that makes it as easy as possible for you to succeed.
Right, exactly. And willpower, there is a place for willpower, but you can't base your whole business around willpower, because it eventually runs out.
Yeah, I mean, right. Motivation as well. You can be motivated one day and not motivated the next day, but you still have to get up. You still have to go on and do it.
Right.
So that framework thing, that structure thing is good. If you had to pick it, the biggest, and I know, actually, there's a question, perhaps. You've moved from the basketball focus as your history, as the place where you learned all these skills, these mindsets. And you're now focusing more on business and general life, really. I'm going to assume that the majority of now what you do is around business and life, and the minority, perhaps, is around the basketball side. What would you think the most important lessons from that career were that have translated from the court to the boardroom for example?
Well, the biggest thing for me personally is just understanding the concept of selling yourself, marketing yourself, and making sure that people know that you exist, because that's what I had to do to get my chance to play basketball. Now, going further, if I'm, let's say, I'm talking to an audience of people, what are the things that I took from it? Then the number one piece is the mindset. And this is kind of what we've been talking about already here, Paul. And the four pieces of our framework are discipline, confidence, mental toughness, and personal initiative. And we talked about a few of those already. So the most important aspect is the mindset, because in any business, the two key factors are your performance and your results. How do you perform and what results have been produced? Because that's the mandate for anyone in any space, is you got to produce a certain outcome. The challenge for a lot of people is they don't know what the outcome is. They don't know what the outcome is supposed to be, especially when I work with entrepreneurs. They haven't clarified these things. Now, when you work at a job or a company, they usually have it laid out for you. But when you are doing it yourself, you have to lay it out. And a lot of people neglect to do that because they're not even aware. So that's the most important part, is understanding that we need to get performance and results. Mindset's the first piece. The second piece is a strategy, was just a plan of action. What are we going to do? Who, what, when, where, why, and how? Who's responsible for what? How are we going to do it? When we're doing it, where we're doing it, and why we're doing it. Third piece is a system. How do we make sure the strategy gets executed on consistently, so it can be predictable, consistent, and duplicatable? And then the last piece is the accountability. How do you make sure that everyone and everything is and are doing their jobs as expected, so that we're getting the expected outcomes on a consistent basis? So mindset, strategy, systems, and accountability.
I'm sorry, you just said that far too quickly. I think there's at least a book there. You wouldn't happen to have written a book in this.
One or two.
You're at 34, I saw somewhere. Is that right?
Close enough, yeah.
Close enough. Give or take 5. Okay. I'll do it. 35. I'll do. So discipline, mental toughness, confidence, personal initiative. You're a confident guy. What would you say to somebody who isn't, quite simply, doesn't feel they have it?
Well, everybody wants it. I mean, that's something that I've always known, even going back to the sport day. Everybody wants to be confident. And the reason why I'm qualified to talk about confidence, Paul, because I wasn't always confident. I know what it feels like to not have it, and I had to build it up. So I've seen every level of the spectrum. So the first thing is we got to get clear on what confidence is. And for that, we just go to the dictionary. And confidence is defined as your belief in your ability to do something. So where do you get the belief in your ability to do a thing? Is usually from actually doing it. Which is why in the sports world, we practice. Why in the professional world, you prepare ahead of time for the things that you're going to do. So discipline creates confidence. So structure creates discipline. Discipline creates confidence. So in that order. So that's why discipline is the number one thing that we do here. It's the first piece of everything we do. When people ask me, Dre, what's the most important asset for you personally or for another person who wants to achieve? His answer is always the same. It's discipline. Then when you're disciplined, then you afford yourself the right to be confident. So confidence is your belief in your ability to do something. Now, someone may say, well, okay, Dre, I can practice, but I've never been on the stage. I've never been in the game. I've never been on a sales call. Now, how do I get the confidence to do that? I can prepare, but I haven't actually done it. So what I tell people is you can borrow your confidence. Just picture someone who is a great salesperson, who is a great speaker, or is a great athlete, and imagine the type of mindset that they would be in before they did that same thing. And science tells us that we have these things in us called mirror neuron. And a mirror neuron is, for example, I heard this guy named James Altucher. Don't know if anyone's familiar with him.
Yeah.
He talked about how before he goes on a date or before he goes on some social activity, he would watch video of a comedian on stage doing stand-up. And the reason he did that is because the comedian is very relaxed, he's affable, he's personable, he's making people laugh. And the mirror neurons in James watching the video will make him be more affable, personable, and relaxed when he went out and actually met with his friends at the bar or when he went on that date. So that's what mirror neurons do. So it's like if you watch another person do something, you get a little bit of ability to do it yourself just because you saw them do it. So my son, for example, he's 17 months old. He hasn't been around a ton of other kids, but when I'm outside with him and he sees another kid and the other kid does something, my son goes and tries to do the same thing just because he saw him do it. And that's how human beings are as well. When we see someone else do something, a little bit of that ability rubs off on us, even if we're not as good as them. A little bit of that ability, or at least thinking that we can do it, rubs off on us just by watching them do it. So that's what I mean when I say borrow your confidence. So if you're a basketball player, how would LeBron James come onto the court? What kind of mindset would he be in? You can try to borrow and put yourself in the same frame of mind. You can't play like him, but you can put yourself in that frame of mind, and that will unlock your skills. Not going to make you him, but it can unlock your skills. And you can do that in any space. And then after you go do that one time, now you can use yourself as a frame of reference. So now this is not faking it till you make it. This is actually becoming it, because when you're doing something like selling, Now, you can't fake closing a sale. You can't fake putting the ball in the basket on the basketball court. You either did it or you didn't do it. So this is not faking it till you make it, is actually becoming it, because the process for achieving anything in life is being, then doing, then having. So you must step into the mindset first, then you do the thing, and then you get the outcome. And this is another thing is why wrap up this answer, that if someone's trying to become successful in life, however you define success, one of the worst things that can happen is you go and win a lottery, right? You win $10 million or $1 billion in a lottery. It doesn't actually make you successful because you skipped to the having, but you never became the right type of person. And this is how somebody can make a lot of money or get a lot of money from winning the lottery, but they end up going back to the same financial state they were in before 5-10 years later, because they never changed as a person. Fundamentally, they didn't change. Only thing that changed was their outcome. They didn't do anything. They didn't change who they were being. Only thing that changed was the having. And when you do things out of order, usually end up right back in the same spot.
I'm assuming that your next work will be that of social philosophy, if not psychiatry, Dre, because I think you're hitting something fairly profound there. The idea of borrowing your confidence, I think, is possibly rooted in the success of humanity, is it not? I mean, unless we copy what other people have done, how do we build on it? Yes, I might be able to watch you on the court and aspire to have those abilities. But somebody else could watch that, learn from you, take that confidence, and then eventually exceed what you've done. So you've built upon, and as a species, we then grow rather than just as an individual. That's a fairly profound discovery there. And I do like the order of operations. You can't just have. You have to be. You have to have that aspiration. You have to have that growth. Despite all of our best intentions and despite borrowing others' confidence, we still sometimes get kicked in the face. To quote that other great social philosopher, Mr. Tyson, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Can you talk about something perhaps where you've had a setback, a challenge that you've had to overcome? How you put your mind to that?
Sure. So that was really the genesis of how I started to get known online by the athletes, was because they found out about my story. I only played 1 year high school ball and I walked on to play college ball. So a lot of players identify with that because a lot of players, not everybody makes the basketball team. Not everyone gets recruited or gets a scholarship to play college ball out of school. So when they heard about that story, what really intrigued them was this guy faced the same setbacks that I'm facing, but he kept going, or he kept trying. He didn't make the team and tried out again anyway, or he wasn't invited to come play in college, but he showed up anyway and was able to play his way into that. And then in the pros, it was the same thing. I was not invited. Nobody was calling me to come play pro. I went and made the calls and reached out to them and made them understand that I existed, that there was something here that they should know about. So having done that is really what got a lot of people's attention on me from the beginning. So all three of those situations. And that's the reason why I talked so much about mindset. And this is back when I was talking to basketball players. So I would talk about mindset. It would kind of just seep into the things that I was saying. Even when I wasn't trying to talk about mindset, it would just come up because I had to tell these people, here's why I did this. Here's how I did this. Here's my thinking when I was doing these things. And that's what led to people saying, hey, can you talk more about mindset? Because the way you're describing it, no one's ever broken it down or explained it that way. So that's where it started. And then again, as I started talking about that, people who didn't play sports said, well, hey, we need it too. So that's where it really came from for me. And because I had those things in me, Paul, and this is before I even knew it was a thing. Once I started talking about it, and then I started to put something real around it. I made it into a tangible thing. And that's where Work on Your Game came from. Mindset, discipline, confidence, mental toughness, and personal initiative. So because I've had those things for so long, I do face setbacks. I do face challenges. Our first year when I was trying to establish myself as, all right, this guy is an entrepreneur, I made a lot more calls than I got answers, right? And I made a lot more pitches than I got acceptances. And even the ones I was getting accepted, they weren't offering to pay me because I hadn't proven anything yet. I was nobody. So a bunch of free speaking gigs my first year or two, getting into the game. But because I was already mentally conditioned, and that's what we call this, mental conditioning. Because I was mentally conditioned to deal with that I know not everybody you call is going to answer, not everybody you speak to is going to say yes, and not everyone you leave a message is going to call you back. I knew that was going to happen. It didn't bother me as much as it would maybe somebody else. And conditioning is not about things happening or not happening. It's about how quickly you get over it when something does happen. And that's hang up one call, make the next call. All right, do you need 5 minutes? You need 5 hours? You need 5 days? You need 5 seconds? That's what conditioning is about.
That's an athletic thing as well. It's your recovery rate. How fast does your heart
Exactly.
get back to normal again?
That's right.
That's a very interesting one. 17-month-old son. What about work-life balance? How do you sort that out?
Well, I mean, the first thing we got to be honest that mommy's doing a lot more work than I am. Right? Yeah, she's with the breastfeeding and the nursing. I mean, the baby needs mommy more than he needs daddy, at least at this point. So
Absolutely.
it's not as much of a shift for me, but at the same time,
Just
yeah,
wait.
not yet. Yeah, just not yet. Yeah, he's not old enough yet that I can kind of take him for the whole day and we don't need mommy's involvement, right? He still needs mommy's involvement. So for me, the biggest thing is just making sure that I'm showing him the right things, demonstrating the right things. And I know that he's watching me, he's noticing things, he's starting to copy words. Yesterday, 2 days ago, no, yesterday, I was reaching for a package. I had him in the store. I was reaching for a package that was down on the ground floor, and my phone slipped out of my pocket, fell on the ground. And I said a swear word, and he immediately repeated it.
Of course he did. Of course he did.
Yeah. And I laughed, and then he kept saying it because he was getting a positive response from saying it. So it was just funny. So now he says it. And then today I dropped something and I didn't say the swear word, and he immediately said that word anyway, because now he associated something falls on the ground. That's what you say. So
yeah.
Yeah. So
what's your son's first word? No, anyway, it's not a nice day today. Let's move on. Change the subject.
No, it wasn't his first word, but it was.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay. So you're standing there, your mother and the pastor. She says, "Oh, how are you doing? Son of a bitch." What? Oh, love it. What are you working on right now, Dre?
Working on right now is the Work on Your Game University. That is where we do all of our coaching, consulting, speaking courses. Everything is housed under the umbrella of the university. So that's the biggest thing that we are focused on right now, is just that. And I tried to, for years, I created a whole bunch of different things. I had 1,000 different products out there that I was marketing and promoting. We still got all the products, but the focus is on the university. That's our main focus.
And where can people find you when they need you?
Well, you can find me on all the social medias. I'm on every single one of them. So whichever one you like the most: LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. I'm on every one. My profiles are all public, so I'm very easy to find. And as far as off social media, just go to workonyourgameuniversity.com.
Dre Baldwin, it's been an outstanding pleasure to talk to you today, sir. Thank you so much for sharing. And I look forward to phase 2 when we hear how successful the university has been and all the lives you're going to change from there.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you sharing your platform. Thank you for the opportunity, Paul.